Huawei has just announced new products in Mexico. We are talking about a new Nova 12 series, plus the Huawei Band 9 and the Huawei Freelace Pro 2. So let me tell you first about the new cell phone news. Although in this case it is curious that Huawei has not brought to Mexico the Huawei Nova 12, nor the Huawei Nova 12 Pro, nor the Huawei Nova 12 Ultra. So it has only brought the trimmed edition, which in China was called Huawei Nova 12 Lite, but in Mexico it arrived with the name Huawei Nova 12S. These devices have also had their global premiere, so it is quite remarkable that in Mexico has been the announcement, because usually all brands take much longer to present their devices in Mexico. In addition to the Huawei Nova 12S, the Huawei Nova 12 SE and the Huawei Nova 12i were presented. Let's start with the Huawei Nova 12i, which is the most economical model of the entire series. It integrates an 8-megapixel front camera, is 8.4 millimeters thick, 199 grams in weight, and its main camera is 108 megapixels. Possibly that's the highlight, but even though it has a rear module that looks much more impressive, it's really only that camera that will be attractive. The other two will be for decoration only. As for charging, it supports 40 watts with Huawei Supercharge, and the processor is the Snapdragon 680. They come with 8 GB of RAM and 128 or 256 GB versions of storage. The screen is 6.7 inches IPS with Full HD Plus resolution and comes with 5000 mAh of battery. The price of this device announced for Mexico is 5,999 pesos, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. Now let me tell you all about the Huawei Nova 12 SE, which is an intermediate edition between these three devices that have been presented in Mexico. This one integrates a 32 megapixel front camera, a thickness of 7.39 millimeters and 186 grams in its weight. So it is thinner and lighter. The main camera is 108 megapixels, but it also adds an 8 megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, and the third camera is just a macro camera. It supports 66-watt charging, but has the same Snapdragon 680 processor, the same RAM, and in this case arrives only in a 256 GB storage configuration. The screen is 6.67 inches with OLED technology and Full HD Plus resolution. It comes with 4500 mAh battery. So like all accounts, they are fairly simple devices because they do not represent too much evolution over the last generation. The price announced for Mexico is 7,999 pesos, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. So the highest model in the series is the Huawei Nova 12S, which actually in China is the lowest model in the series. So let me tell you about its specifications. It has a 60 megapixel wide-angle front camera. That's possibly its most attractive point. It's also very thin at 6.88 millimeters and very light at 168 grams. On the back it has a 50 megapixel camera that, despite being lower resolution compared to the 108 megapixels of its siblings, it is actually a much more advanced sensor and with f1.9 aperture just like its siblings. In this case, the second camera is an 8 megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera with autofocus, so it can also take macro shots. So it improves significantly in the camera section. With respect to charging, we will find support for 66-watt charging, and the processor is the Snapdragon 778G in a 4G edition. It has 8 GB of RAM and 256 storage. Its screen is 6.7 inches or LED with 4500 mAh in its battery. Like all accounts, they are devices that don't look that attractive, especially in the processor section. The two base models have the Snapdragon 680, which is a processor that feels increasingly old and in general in that price range does not look like it is going to be an excellent choice. And on the other hand, the Snapdragon 778G, although it is a processor that is considerably good and fast, again feels like it is starting to get very old. It seems that Huawei is still having complications with regards to the processors it uses, since, for example, in Huawei Nova 12, Huawei Nova 12 Pro, and Huawei Nova 12 Ultra, we see that Huawei has decided to integrate Kirin processors. But perhaps they have not managed to have a large batch of processors, and that is why they are only going to be distributed in China, and for outside China they have had to resort to a bit old Qualcomm processors. Hopefully Huawei will soon be able to recover also in the development of their chips and can achieve a much more widespread distribution. The price of the Huawei Nova 12S is 9,999 Mexican pesos. But remember that the prices here are not the same as over there.